Checking. G'day. Apparently people with stopwatches don't work on public holidays, so don't have the official times, but just make it up as we go. It's pretty standard anyway. How bad is that? G'day. Half of this is working. What's going on? Not much. Just missed the very boring meeting at Warwick Farm. Why is this not working? What is happening? Anything? Any news? Anything exciting? I cover the well. Curder's run at the end was good. I'm excited to see how. That's not very nice. Just start talking about the track at Rosehill. Cheers, Potter. Tigers just beat the Eels, and about the most exciting thing this afternoon. Yeah, well, there used to be the old rivalry. I used to be a mad Tigers fan 100 years ago. Sort of late 80s, 90s, I was a mad Tigers fan, and it was always the highlight of the year, Tigers Eels. I guess it still is the local derby. So Rosehill track Saturday, I think there was everyone was sort of jumped the gun a bit, thinking it was mad on pace early. I think it was just sort of combination of average horses, the right horses being in the right spots. As the day went on, it sort of equaled out a little bit. Certainly wasn't as easy to come from back and wide, but it definitely wasn't the most leaded dynamite track ever. There were a few really slow tempos by the looks of it that helped those up on speed. And again, sorry, if I start speaking Swahili, I do have a bit of a cracking headache. Some weird man flu, so we'll see how we go. I may as well we'll cover a couple of weird things early. That I know it's sort of been well publicised, but anyone who hasn't seen it, this Bow Desert thing's terrible. Too many chocolate eggs. I can't eat them. I'm dairy free now, so I don't even eat eggs. It's so boring. My life's boring. All I like to eat is ice cream and chocolate after I do my ass, and can't even do that anymore. Can't do it on Easter. I used to be an absolute lunatic at the Easter show, buying show bags and destroying myself, but it might ward off the diabetes for a couple of years. So yeah, this is the protest for anyone who hasn't seen it. Second versus first upheld. It's the thing back here in the orange with the white and black sleeves versus the winner who sits outside the leader here. So the interference it's actually hard to find. The most incredible part is that sort of came to light afterwards that there's only one camera angle here. So the camera angle we're looking at is the only angle that there is, which makes it worse. So the interference is, you'll see the sort of horse here snatch up. So I don't know why he's trying to go for a run between, and it doesn't look side on like there's a run there, but whatever, he sort of gets checked out of it here, there. That's it. That's the interference. You can sort of see whether it was the leader pushing out or him pushing in, or there was no run. I don't know how anyone could possibly tell from that angle. Also can't tell why in a field of four the rider on the fourth horse wasn't just easing around the heels of the two in front. Either way, that's the interference. And then the original winner sort of never looks to have anything but full control of the race. The thing running eventually second doesn't look to be closing at any stage. Second versus first upheld. Yeah, I don't know what'll come of this, and I do say that Curic's come out and said they're going to launch sort of an investigation into it. They can't overturn the decision. They can't return punters their money. But if you got the money from and you back the second horse, I think you've landed a miracle, because I don't know what has happened there. A complete brain explosion. Number one, I don't know how you could possibly say, even if there was a run there, that the horse would have beaten it for sure. and how you can sort of contribute whatever interference is there to any runner. I thought they said there was no patrol footage. That's interesting, Jumpsuit, because what I read was there was no other angle. There was only one angle. So that's if they've got patrol footage, that sort of makes it interesting, but I still couldn't uphold it. Okay. I'll search for the different footage, because that was what was, I think it was the trainer. I was reading an interview with the trainer where he said there was only one camera angle. Regardless, I don't see how that could be upheld in a million years, and they've sort of done nothing. I'll try and find it. But that was the first bit of a weird one. The other weird one was probably J-Mac and Nash, which we'll have a look at. May as well crush out the we'll do the Rosehill meeting now. Oi, oi, oi. I need to find a second wind here. Yeah, I'll rush through a couple of these races because they're not very exciting. Yeah, I was surprised they said there was only one camera angle because it's pretty unusual, but sort of makes sense. Yeah, pretty boring Midway pre-race. Didn't look like there was anything too exciting here. Rachel King goes out and sets a fairly solid tempo on a fittish horse in Cruel Summer, who normally does its best work on wet tracks. She sort of rode this horse a little bit the same last start, and I was critical because she was sort of hunting the horse up inside the leader there, and that horse came out and ran really well today, nearly won in town midweek. So the form's held up, fairly dominant display. Whether it was a good ride or not really sure, but probably set a lot of tongues wagging in respect to the manner the track might race. I think there's only one horse pulled up with issues. So Kishana pulls up 2 out of 5 lame, and Field where he had a post-race 1 nostril bleed. He's been a bit of a frustrating horse, a victim of gaits and things like that, but he's also just a bit of a punishing creature. So I did see Will Friedman coming out today asking for a poll from trainers who feel like they keep copying bad barrier draws, and I'm assuming that Field Weary is one of those horses that's got him wearing my tin hat a bit. Kishana's the horse pulls up lane, does miss the kick. This horse wasn't a bad run, just worth keeping an eye on. I think it's called, or what's it called? Always Sure. The stable's cooled off a bit, the Sarah Ryan stable, but still worth keeping an eye on. Could heat up back up at any time. So Cruel Summer's back on the inside here. Rachel's riding it along quite aggressively to hold the front and doesn't, slacken the tempo at any stage. They certainly do run along a little bit. The time overall's okay. We talk about this every time, that Midway form doesn't really travel. So Midway form is Midway form. That's the only reason you really spend a bit of time looking at on these meetings in review, because they're normally a similar sort of horses. Keep backing up against each other week after week, and unless you get some fresh blood into it, which is usually the horse you have a close look at, because any sort of fresh blood in these races is usually a good thing. This race is certainly no exception. There's not a lot happens. They basically all get their chances behind. There's no real super forgives apart from Fieldbury with the bleed and Kishana who pulls up with an issue. So there's always So Sure getting back towards the inside here late. Just pokes along. It's pace assisted. Big Apple down there, right down the outside as well as poking along, but they're not really doing anything. Any of them. Mayrose may be ready to go next start, but even it's sort of testing the patience. I think these are all pretty limited horses, and just because Always So Sure was first up from a spell, you're sort of a little bit lenient on it. Wall's very fit horse. Putt for Dough had its chance. All of these horses fit enough to do, close to their best. So very plain race to start the day. Yeah, I think Big Apple can improve with the gate, and should be sort of close to its peak next time, but it's not a horse that you're sort of losing sleep waiting to find the right race. It's just it's the sort of horse that could win a race like this next time out if it drew a gate and whatever, and there was no new standout performer sort of arriving on the scene. It could certainly, one of these two could certainly win a race of this level which is what they're most likely going to find. Happy birthday to Tony Lorch. Who said that? Is that really? Or is it because it's April Fool's Day? Is that why it's Tony Lorch's birthday? I'm going to ask you. I'm not sure. You might have got me. You nearly might have got me there. It was penalised heavily from those Melbourne runs for mine. Yeah, I agree. I agree that it definitely needs. It's one of the horses that needs to sort of come down a bit in its rating. They definitely don't come down quick enough. It sort of talked about quite a bit last week. Horses getting boosted in ratings. One of those was Another Will, but it's obviously a horse right on the up, and it has been able to cope with it. But these horses that get sort of savagely bashed and don't have that ability struggle to compete. But hopefully they're going to start handling those situations more. Neville, Selwood, it looked like these two up front were going to get sort of nice runs. The classier horses in the race, Zarek, Serpentine, they did. Tim sort of controlled the race. This is, again, not official times, but going off the times that they've recorded, sort of -2 below to the 600, 2 above. So very evenish sort of tempo, only aiding the leaders, if anything. I think Renaissance Woman gave herself up that she's not really a 2,000-metre horse, that a mile's really her go. The preparation was not ideal either, so you could give her one more try at it if you really wanted to, but I think she sort of gave herself up that she's a miler in mare's grade. She ran quite well, but certainly across the line she was very lucky to hold on to third. She would have run 5th or 6th in another 50 metres or so. Again, not a race that really lit the world alight from a perspective of anything to follow, I didn't think. Tim controls.
Leads by 3/4 now to Cardrate and Awar. Normandy Bridge third, followed by Zaire. A wide pass a bit as last. They go inside the 1,000 and Serpentine.
You know, Little Mix probably was the one who got stuck in an awkward spot here, having to chase a little bit. But 3 wide in this sort of tempo race was not a huge disadvantage with that lightweight. I didn't think, not ideal for sure, but get to this spot and Zarek looks the winner, which is pretty likely. You always knew Serpentine was going to continue to kick back. So if Zarek didn't put a good margin on it quickly, it was always going to be a interesting horse. I thought Cadre de Noir did a decent enough job. I think it's only second up here, so its effort was pretty good.
Is really being tested now by Zarek. He's about 5 horses off the fence, and Zarek moved up to join turn.
Renaissance Woman definitely lets down the best in the race. It's just like you can see she's gone past those sort of middle distance staying types quite comfortably, and even sort of Little Mix and He's a Shocker are coming back on her on the line, and right across the line she's just like weakening badly. You can see here she's obviously stopped riding, but she's running 7th, sort of 100 metres past the post maximum. So she tracks up, puts these horses away, and struggles late. She's arguably not in the best part of the track, but I think sort of 1,800 metres at her absolute maximum, and the 2,000 metres completely tops her out. She either needs to draw a gate in weaker grade or mare's grade or something and have that suck run and win. But I think to be strong and dominant, she needs to go back to a mile, preferably mare's grade. He's going great, Serpentine. He is what he is. Zarek's ready to win a similar race like this. I guess they all line up for something like a JRA plate or something next start. They'll all probably go to similar races. Were you joking, Crow, or what? Was it an April Fool's Day joke, or was it because King could only be born on April Fool's Day, or He's a Shocker? Yeah, he sort of peaked as well, so he was the one, at least he was forced wide. He sort of had 3 wide trail. I'd be fairly neutral on him for sure. From a performance perspective, if he can come on, he can be competitive. I didn't hate the run of Cadre Noir. I don't think it's a horse that wants to sit outside the leader ideally, so with the sit, I think it can improve. I think it likes a bit of wet ground too. They all poked along okay. The ones up front certainly were given the best of it from conditions perspective, from a tempo perspective. So I think they all kind of were pass-ish marks in a pretty boring race. Can't see Serpentine winning anything of value. winning anything at value or of value. It always seems to start a similar price in whatever it sort of lines up in, unless it's a Melbourne Cup. It's pretty hard to knock the horse. Like he's done a very good job. What's he won? His last two, he hadn't won for a while. He won at Eagle Farm. He's only really starting to win for the stable now. I think I was on him for my life the day that he got run down by Cucaracha. Pretty standard. Wrong race. So Baillieu, again, controlled tempo, nothing super special. Pretty good effort from linebacker. I thought he didn't parade great. Yeah, that wouldn't be the smartest thing in the world, I don't think, but it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I didn't think linebacker paraded great. I thought a node paraded better. I thought a node... I think linebacker maybe showed up that I wouldn't be surprised if they tipped it out here. I think it was a very good effort to knuckle it down and sort of beat a node. A node, that form just sort of keeps looking stronger, that doubling down form in that race that it came through. So considering he was coming out of a maiden off a bit of a weird prep as opposed to a sort of hard fit Waterhouse horse who found the fence, I thought it was a great effort to fight back and win. I thought he'd try and hold the front, and Adam did a great job to cross on a node, I thought, and sort of put the pressure back on this horse. You can see sort of half keen in the run too. Like it's getting a nice run, but it wants to overdo things. And it looked a bit like that in the parade to me. Just maybe it's a little bit fresh with that gap between runs. I'm not entirely sure, but it just looked like it wasn't at its absolute peak or best. Physically, just looked a bit nervy, and I think the horse will improve with racing. This is linebacker. Sorry, I just want to get the race up so I'm not missing who these horses are. Yeah, Odinson was obviously going to be in trouble once it was 3 wide out there. The other horse that sort of to highlight here I thought was Broadsiding. So it's in the red cap, Godolphin colours blue, running 5th, 6th in the middle of the field, coming widest. So 2 up in front, really obvious, dominant throughout. And I just thought Broadsiding did a really good job considering tempo wasn't ideal for it. The way the track was racing on the day, hard to circle and win. So to sit wide, don't think it had cover personally. So we sit four lengths behind the horse in front of it. It was a good effort and super strong to the line. I think it's got a race in it for sure. I think Miss Bustlinger pulled up with a slight issue. Maybe it pulled a shoe or something like that. So not a bad effort from it, but it had the softer run. This horse has had to circle. Just sort of said he was there to get beat, linebacker, and stuck his head out and really sold to the line. So he's definitely a horse with potential really good upside. A node's interesting. Will they throw it in a size, or will they throw both of them in a size? I'm not really sure. Which one? Can we get a mile? Broadsiding? Broadsiding get a mile, or? Yeah, I think that's what I'd be doing, Callum. I'd be taking care of it personally. Yeah, I think Broadsiding will run a mile. No doubt. No doubt. Yeah, I'd be looking after linebacker if it was mine, but I guess we'll have a look at those markets. It's very tempting probably to back up to these horses in a size if you can. So a node's $15. Linebacker's not in the market, so that's a good sign that it's probably not going there. A node's really well set up. It's not 1,000,000 to 1 in its size, but it's obviously going to be a very strong addition this year by the looks of it. A lot of horses looking to back up. Stormboy, Lady of Camelot, Manal, Traffic Warden, Coleman, all looking to back up from the slipper. I think Fearless as well. Espionage, we sort of haven't seen since the setback. Prost out of the slipper. Yeah, like it's going to be a really strong size potentially. So, but I know definitely looks like it's relishing getting out to that sort of 1,400 metre trip. I know this was only 13, this was 14. But yeah, sort of hard fit, tough horse on the back up with those horses coming off a slipper prep. Very interesting. Broadsiding Champagne, maybe a touch deep. Maybe a touch deep. You'd rather it show up in, there's another mile 2-year-old race that's not that strong. When's the Percy Sykes? PJ Bell next week. Percy Sykes Saturday week. You're not in the market for it. Broadsiding. No. I think it's 1400. Admitted in the Champagne, but Jay Atkins a bit far away. Fernhill, that's the race I'm thinking of. Yeah, the Fernhill's the race that would be perfect for the for broadsiding, I'd reckon. Just second tier mile, perfect race. Tulloch Stakes. So again, pretty even, just above average tempo. Set pretty solidish, just above average tempo, solid time overall. Again, pretty nothing race. Performance-wise, I thought Tyler's ride on High Dandy was disgusting. Gave it no chance, basically, and then came in and said the horse didn't stay the trip. Anyway, talk about it more in a sec. From a class perspective, I definitely don't think these horses are going to trouble a Derby. Wouldn't surprise me if they paid up for Wymark. Wouldn't knock them. Very hard fit horse. Doesn't look the strongest Derby in the world, but they just didn't look like Derby contenders, to be honest. We'll have a look at the film.
Tulloch Stakes racing now, and High Dandy's jumped out fairly well. Texas.
So my problem with this ride is that High Dandy was coming out of a 1400 metre, was it 1500 metre run on debut where Tyler gave it a barrier trial, missed the kick, out the back, slow tempo, never put in the race, sprinted home 400 metres. Then he goes to Wyong, change of tactics to be ridden more forward. The right rail was out, so very flattering for those horses up on speed on the fence in a maiden. He finds the front, leads, dictates, wins. He went too quick there, but then sort of got time off and then sprinted away. Obviously a decent enough horse to get away with a maiden. You're now presented with a nice draw, way up in grade, in a race that looked like it had some decent tempo in it, and you go out and ride the horse like this. So you presented a draw where you can take a sit. The horse hit the line really nicely first up off a backward position, so he's not as if he's a one-dimensional on-pace horse, and for whatever reason he must have had it in his head, the jockey, that a maiden on a leader-sympathetic track over a mile in a maiden, going up to 2,000 metre group race against sort of hard and fit horses, so up in distance, everything, you're going to go and try and ride it the same way. Like, look at how hard and aggressive he is on this horse to find the front. He's got the horse completely out of its comfort zone. No reason to do so. Like, he could have been in that position where Noisy Boy is, sort of 5th, 6th there, or even in front of, what is it? Glad you think so, on the fence there where the grey is. That sort of position was as far forward as he needed to go as up in this grade to give the horse a chance to finish the race off. You can see how aggressive he is in front. He's just completely overdoing it, and just a really bad ride for mine. But that's what kills me with Tyler. He just really struggles with tempo for mine. Obviously a promising rider in his own right. Can ride a winner, but man, he does some crazy things on horses and sets them impossible tasks and then comes back in and blames the horses. Anyhow, Kintyre gets a decent enough run behind. The winner's midfield outside the grey, Wymark. Noisy Boy's behind it. He's got a really weird action. Noisy Boy and Saltcoat. So that was kind of the sweet spot to be in this race. A little bit above average tempo. So Wymark, Noisy Boy, Saltcoats. They're your three that run 1, 2, 3. Kintyre's runs 4th. Don't think he's really a 2,000 metre or plus horse. And probably showed that here. He's a very honest, sort of very solid Group 2 horse, I'd say. He's probably what he's going to end up being. And, probably more around the mile range is where I think he'll find his sweet spot. But decent stay of this Wymark for sure. Just had everything go its way here for mine. Noisy Boy with his funny action chasing after it. Saltcoats down the outside, running better than I probably thought it would. High Dandy fainting on the inside, as you would expect after being set at such a task. Anderson Bridge sort of ground away all right into 5th with a little bit of pace assistance. I couldn't see many of the ones behind sort of turning the table. Just doesn't look like Derby form, which is, I guess, what we care about most. you know, backing up into a Derby. Definitely, you know, he would run well in a Derby. Why, Mark? He'll run well. I think he'll run top 6 or something like that. So you wouldn't blame him for putting in and paying the money up and running him, especially as fit as he is. I just can't see him being a Derby winner off that person. Was it X-Waller? I think he's had it all the way. I don't know. I'll check. Hang on. It's got the name and colours like a Waller horse, but I don't think he ever had it. No, it looks like he's had it all the way, Friedman. He's had it all the way. But this is its second prep. Its first prep didn't show... Well, it showed decent form, but it sort of kicked off over 1,200. Ran, you know, third, fourth. Very sort of even sections. You know, behind Ross is like Militarized, Queen of Dragons, Kintyre, Ravello. So, not as if it had poor form. Then kicked off and ran well over 1,300. Went up to the Gold Coast to the Magic Millions Maiden and came from a hopeless position around fourth. Its form's been really good, this prep. It's just sort of continually chipped away and improved. I would be surprised, as I said, haven't got the finalised times in, but I'd be surprised if he's boosted again off his last start rating. But, you know, pretty honest horse. Yeah, he's done really well. As like you probably have to pay up and throw him in the Derby. No real reason not to. I think he's has he got his nuts? No, they gelded him, so he doesn't have his balls. But you know, 50 grand. He's probably won. What's he won? $445,000 now. So he probably earned his shot at the title. You know, and it's not going to be the strongest Derby in the history of the world. That's for sure. Yeah, I'll have a look at the Derby and have a chat about it. The weather's probably interesting too. Stay inside, wasn't it? Probably the most flattered horse in the history of the world. Little nuggety wet tracker.
They're followed further back by She's All Class going right up the fence there in the red cap. Third last gently rolled from Barbie's Fox and Hell Hath No Fury settles last of all. Three Gossip takes the lead now.
Probably should talk about what this race is. So Emancipation Stakes, this race they walk. Some really disappointing performances here. Sit sprint sort of dominance from Alentia. Tim's ride on insert name here, Macarena or something. What's it called? Macarena, probably the talking point of the race. Certainly had his time over. I'm sure he'd take a sit. He wouldn't take a sit. He'd probably sort of kick up under Jay here and hold the front. Horse is not the greatest breathing horse, and, you know, the stable known for taking sits when possible. So, you know, taking a sit was the ideal option, but behind a 70-1 chance and, you know, the way the race worked out, certainly in hindsight, you'd be kicking up and taking luck out of play. She probably would have been in the finish, it looks like, if she had held the front. Nearly certainly would have been. Hinged and even Ruthless Dame, I thought, were quite disappointing here, considering the tempo. Ruthless Dame jumping from 12 to 1500 was always going to be a huge query, but had such a nice run, and Hinge just went terribly. And it was probably what contributed to Tim's poor of luck or not being able to get out was that Hinge sitting outside a 100-1 chance in Street Gossip couldn't put any margin on it, couldn't get away from it to allow Tim to sort of push into the clear or get behind it and go around it at any stage. So, yeah, disappointing from Hinge, disappointing from Ruthless Dame, disappointing from Tim, I guess you'd say, over Macarena. Alentia on the backup, just able to out-sprint them. I thought Vienna Princess was disappointing. Overall, I thought this was a pretty average race. Time's okay, considering how slow the tempo was. Yeah, I wouldn't say that Tim struggles when he's not leading, but it's certainly he's you know, well, I don't know if you'd say like a golfer, it's his strength, whatever that may be. It's definitely his strength being able to lead and dictate where possible, and he knows this horse quite well. So for him to say he's worried about sort of getting it out of its comfort zone, you know, at this stage, it's not as if he's really grabbing hold. He's still happy to slide forward, and the one outside's just doing enough to really want to command that position. So he would have had to be more aggressive to hold the front or risk getting into a duel. And with a horse that doesn't breathe well, probably wasn't ideal. But yeah, I think I'd say sort of, if you want to be critical of Tim, it's from further back positions than this. He tends to get out of a gap behind the leader and be present and understand sort of how the races be run and where he should position his horse to get out, as well as most when he's racing in that sort of first four position. It's when he sort of gets back in the field, he certainly, his strike rate drops. But anyway, I'm obviously defensive of him, but I do also get to know, I know a lot more of what sort of has happened and gone on in his head, because we get to talk about it a lot too. So Alentia at this point in the middle here, this is Ruthless Dame, who's had the best run. Hinged outside leader, Vienna Princess is back here, outside Alentia on the back of, well, no one at this stage. So yeah, I thought Ruthless Dame would do more than this, even if she got sort of caught late. I thought she'd sprint better off a slower tempo than this. Here's what I'm sort of talking about. So at this point, Hinged can't put this horse away, and that's partly to do with slow tempo and the horse doesn't have a sprint. But you know, so Tim probably expects Hinge to put it away and a gap to open, which never happens. Victim of circumstances and a product of his decision early in the race for sure. But nothing really runs on. I don't really know what to do with this race. I don't know what it feeds. Arctic Glamour does a good job from the back. She's been drawing bad gates all preparation. But it's just kind of weird. It's just kind of weird to watch this horse, who really didn't do a lot behind Chain of Lightning last week, come out and put these horses away. Ruthless Dame, who's a pretty talented horse, had a perfect run, you know, just vulnerable late. Arctic Glamour runs on from the back, and Macarena was certainly unlucky, and this winner's margin's flattered by Macarena not being able to have every chance in the run. But who's the horse back here? This is the one that really puts me off the race. Stormy Witness is only beaten 4.6. Gently rolled. Just a smelly race to me. I'd be very wary of this winner next start. You know, margin being flattered, everything sort of tempo, everything. Especially if she went up in distance and sort of went into a faster run race, I'd be keen to take her on a fair bit. I'd really want her to have a lot in her favour to be not heavily against her next start. Arctic Glamour's going well enough to win a race. Certainly just needs a draw and a bit of a change of luck. Don't know what you do with Ruthless Dame. I thought it was a really strange placement of the horse, 12 to 1500. Whether that will affect her going on into the prep. Kieran Maher's probably my hardest trainer to work out. You know, what he does in his placement of horses and gaps between runs, 30, 40, 50, 60 days between runs, no public trials, all sorts of weird and wonderfuls. Sometimes they race well, sometimes they don't. He's very hard to work out for mine, what days they're on and what days they're off. Macarena I forgive, but she's sort of getting deep into a prep now. I don't know where she heads to from this, and the rest probably need easier or something very different. Vienna Princess probably the real disappointing run in the race. Joe Pride disappointing with Street Gossip. I think Street Gossip has been a really difficult horse for him to work out. I wouldn't be surprised if they changed its tactics completely and tried to drag it out of a race to see if she'll finish off, because she did look a pretty talented horse early and hasn't been able to go on with it. Starts over racing as soon as the other horse crosses. So it's quite the opposite. He was trying to get the horse to settle and not over race, but maybe it was counterproductive. Very hard to tell. As I said, like a horse that doesn't breathe well. And I agree, sort of going back to Callum's statement there, I don't know if the horse wins or not. I don't know. It certainly should have finished closer. I think it's a bit of a nightmare of a horse that it's got that enough ability to put itself into a position. It sticks on, it tries very hard, but it doesn't have a great turn of foot, and it's, you know, the breathing problems. It's just going to be a bit of a nightmare horse forever. Macarena. Star Kingdom Stakes race 6. Bandy's Boy on the path towards the Country Championships final. So these horses are hard to line up. I find when they're coming to these races, when there's another race in mind, and the horse in the last races at Willowdale was a little bit similar. Difference with Bandy's Boy is I don't think he really runs a strong 1,400 metres. I think 1,200 is his definite sweet spot. And, you know, if there was a bit of rain around here, certainly could have entertained him a little bit more seriously than I did. I certainly gave him a chance, but not. He was heavily backed. He was like 20s into 14s late, and no real fluke in the win. I don't think the race is the strongest edition in the history of time, and there are a few excuses for horses behind it, but he's going really well. Just that little query in the back of my mind for him going back to 1,400 in a country championship. Obviously, that should be easier than this, so you'd expect him to run well, but it just that little worry that, especially if it's a testing surface, I think 1,400 is as far as you want. So get the field up. Yeah, I thought there was some average rides from the on paces here. I thought
stand by for a break. Hawaii 5-0 the favourite, and they're racing. He was one of the last out. Hawaii 5-0.
I thought Tom Marquand was probably the worst ride in the race, just not needing to be as aggressive as he was on Zoo Tiger. He should have known that under no other, like, there's no other thought in the mind of Coal Crusher and Malkovich to be running 1-2. They both probably want the fence. So there should be no urgency for him to do anything but other than sort of let them go and then find his horse's rhythm. He doesn't do that. This is Bandy's Boy here. He's just bounced into a spot, you know, just behind it. Some fast sprinters. So the horse is obviously going very well. Or is, yeah, that's Shinzo to his inside. The other thing I'll sort of talk about here is that James gets suspended here for checking Libertad back on the inside. And it was sort of Nash that was poking up there. And I wonder if this was what fizzled over into the next race. So you can see Nash poking up inside James here, which he didn't really need to do. And then that causes James to sort of cut neat and use up and check Libertad. So bit spiteful from Nash there, I thought. Didn't really help Hawaii 5-0, and then that was what caused the pressure onto Libertad. So James gets a little suspension for that. I don't think Nash really helped his chances. Bandy's Boy ends up in a really nice spot because of it. And Shinzo's sort of had to be used up a little bit more than they probably hoped to. When we get to this spot, so winner is here. Joe Roots back on the inside runs third. Malkovich in front runs second. Coal Crusher, who just has never touched the bit the whole race. Zoo Tiger outside leader hasn't stopped working. Butch Cassidy outside it. Hawaii 5-0 coming up the outside. Airman, who sat wide and worked for the majority of the race. Libertad, who copped that check. And that's about it.
It's Malkovich swinging the corner in front by 2 lengths now on Zoo Tiger and Coal Crusher. Butch Cassidy pulling out. Shinzo.
So no real excuses for those on speed, apart from Zoo Tiger, who I just don't think needed to be outside the leader. I don't think that's his go in a 1,200 metre race to be chasing a fast tempo of Malkovich. He should have sort of been back an extra pair and allowing Coal Crusher to get off the fence if it wanted to and track him up. Either way, he'll probably improve with the run. Roots runs on really nicely late. As I've said, there's not a lot of quality in the last section here, time-wise. And Bandy's Boy's just the one that's able to pick up the pieces a bit. I think he's a little bit Johnny on the spot here. As in a hard fit horse, back in distance, off a fast tempo, running down Malkovich, who just doesn't run a strong 1,200 metres right out. Coal Crusher, not at his best, I would say. Zoo Tiger, given a poor ride off a freshen, not at his best. Airman having a tough run. Shinzo first up, and I don't think he's anywhere near the horse that he, you know, everyone may have thought he was going to be, and possibly can improve off that too with a bit of a setback. Butch Cassidy, just a horse. You know, he's the right horse in the right place at the right time. I don't think this form looks exceptionally strong for a similar race, but I think most of these horses will end up in very different races. So Shinzo can improve, Airman can improve. Rocketing Buy can improve. Zoo Tiger can improve if it goes to a 1400 without Shinzo and without Malkovich and Coal Crusher in it. Roots with the blinkers on, certainly an interesting horse. Yeah, we can look at the TJ in Doncaster, no problem. James is a donkey. I don't understand how people claim he's the best in the world without his contract. He's utterly useless. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I think there's versions of James McDonald, but if you watch a rider in him like Kanzinski, whatever it's abstract today, when he's riding for people that he cares about and he's got his full interest and his full attention, he can lift horses over the line. Not many jockeys can do that. He's very aware of, sort of bias, how to get his horse to the right spot, timing. He gets a lot wrong, but he's still trying to make things happen. A lot of them don't. He's pretty good. Omni-Man heading up to Manzelman. Omni-Man's going for a spell, I read. Zoo Tiger needs 1400 in a race where it can set a more sort of even tempo, not under pressure all the way. He's a horse that needs to conserve a little bit of energy and can sustain a little bit of a sprint. Williams first win in the city in 3 years. Yeah, I think you're paying severe overs to back James McDonald's horses at the moment. There's one or two syndicates, and I think what it's happened is the way betting landscape is at the moment. Places like Sportsbet have huge control over the market, and because there's not huge syndicates or anything opposing them, especially early in betting, they know that they can put James McDonald's horses up insanely short, and that recreational punters are happy to take any price. So, even if they've got a horse rated $4 that James is riding, they can put it up $3 and lay it. So they're going to do that. So if you're interested in backing one of James's that looks ridiculously short, it's a chance of correcting late in betting. It just doesn't happen early. They're going to put up insanely short prices about his horses because they can lay them at those prices to the majority of punters regardless. So it's a bit like short price favourites, them firming them up a little bit more and, enticing them into backing the multis and things like that. I don't think it's any smart genius syndicates. It's just that the betting shops have worked out if they put up James half the price he should be, they're going to lay him. So why not do that? And then late in betting, it all sort of works itself out to it's sort of at natural level to a certain degree late. So, I don't really think... I think he's a bit of a victim of that too, because people look at him, they price him up $1.10 in the Jockeys Challenge, and he's got 7 horses under $5, and maybe 2 or 3 of them actually should be. So there's a lot of ways to look at it, but I think he's a very, very, very good jockey personally. Wifeover pulled up with a bit of an issue there, I think. Breathing issues. Libertad, hampered. But I thought it was plain anyway. A bit of a quirky horse that does seem to throw the towel in when things don't go his way, and would be surprised if he did improve or went for a spell or what. I don't really know what to make of that horse. Walt left field, any idea where Manala's heading? Have a couple of future tickets floating around. I believe it's going to the Sires in Champagne. I don't see any reason for it not to be. Fine, J-Mac, I'll leave it. Would rather cop it on the chin if he beats me. I don't mind the idea of betting against James. The problem, and that sort of you got Aaron Bullock's basically the same when you're talking about country provincial New South Wales, because that his horses are at the bottom of their price. So if I've never heard of any of the horses and I look at a horse and say, well, James McDonald's on it and it's $3, you'd think straight away, well, it should be $5 or $6 if any other jockey's on it in the race, potentially. And then you just interrogate that horse straight away to see whether there's any weaknesses in it or not, and look to bet around it. And I'm a little bit the same. I tend to not find James that often, because of that reason. He's normally he is the horse that the jockey that commands the most of the market, regardless of what horse he's on. So I don't mind that angle. Great race this, tempo-wise, ridiculously slow, very slow tempo. Nash nearly pulls his pants down. Few weird things about this race. Number one, James McDonald says after the race, "Oh, I knew when I saw Nash down on 2 to La Vida that something like this was going to happen." Why? Why was he thinking that something like this was going to happen? I think he knew that something like this was going to happen. At least he was aware of it. I don't know how he could possibly be aware of it, that Nash is going to ride his horse closer to the speed and then take off miraculously from what looked a beautiful trailing position and turn it into a dash for the post. You know, it was a great ride, but you know, how was James aware of that? I don't know. Tin hat goes on for that one. Number 2, after the line. If this was a congratulatory pat on the shoulder, I'm a supermodel. Do I care whether he's suspended or not and gets in trouble for it? Absolutely not. Should it be play on? It's between them. But I've got no doubt that James hasn't given him a nice chirp across the line. Nash has had a brain explosion after the line, and the rest is history. Who really cares? But it was a great ride on 2 to La Vida, a really good win. Zardozi had the absolute perfect run to capitalise on it, and her condition just wasn't there. Do I think she can turn the tables on her in an Oaks? Not really. I think they're smart to potentially go to the Derby with Zardozi on the backup and try and beat the Colts, because I think she's more chance of beating the Colts and Geldings than she is of beating Orchestral. She's just a super tough, gritty, grindy, classy horse. You know, she's had a long prep. That may be the only other thing playing against her, but she was there to be beaten on Saturday and stuck her head out and did the job. The other thing here is that James, you know, they're going slow, and he allows Nash to come out here and take that position up rather than close that gap and end up 1-1. He allows Nash to come out and trail and sprint for home. A little bit fishy. Anyway, that's my tin hat moment for the day. It's all very weird. I just think something strange is going on here. Whether I don't know. Anyway, take of it what you will. But yeah, he goes Nash, takes off. James very present, but doesn't go chasing him straight away. Only really gets serious around the bend, and Tom Marquand's just stuck to James' backside wherever he goes. They've obviously run home in really quick time. Nash has timed it basically to perfection and given his horse its absolute best chance to win. And even here, I don't think he ever really wanted shares in Orchestral until she really lengthens the last sort of 100, 150 maybe. But just looking at her, like, I just love looking at physical attributes of horses, especially when you know they're going to sort of line up again in a couple of weeks. And just watching her action and the power she's got, her head, her neck, everything about her, she just looks a higher quality horse to me than the other two. Each to their own when it comes to these sorts of things, but like, she's definitely had a chance in the race, and it's a really nice pipe opener, just sort of sprint home last 600-700 metres to go to an Oaks. So I think she'll win the Oaks. We'll look at this only once, because who really cares? But we're just blowing that up. Can't make it much bigger. My computer wants to have a heart attack if I do, but yeah, so they're still chirping, obviously, and then here comes old mate. Hang on. If that's a congratulatory thank you, I'm a snowman. Next. Half kilo over. I think it's insane that they allow these jockeys to ride half over in these big races, only because they know that they're putting themselves outside their comfort zone to get there a lot of the time. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Callum. There's a little bit more to it, and I thought his comments were very weird. Jesus Christ, that's a left field one. I'll talk about Warwick Farm track later. Write it down to talk about. Definitely a creature of its own. See, 56 is really... Nash is a strange creature, but he turns into a swamp monster when he goes below about 57. And anything below 57, he turns into a creature of the deep south swamp. So, yeah, but why would they could be brainstorming, but why would they be brainstorming between themselves? You know, one's on the $1.60 favourite and the other one's on a 20 to 1 chance. You know, maybe he's privy to Waller's thoughts and, you know, if this happens, make sure you take off or whatever. There's not many jockeys that could have pulled that ride off, to be fair. Nash is one of the few. So, yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is after the race. I'd say, you know, there's probably a bit of a square up for shortening him up the race before and poking his head in a gap that he didn't need to be in and James getting a suspension, and then maybe they had a good crack at each other and things boiled over, but I'm sure they'll return to normality. And, you know, the games are better for Nash being in it. I just hope he sort of pulls his head in a bit and gets back to normal, because not many jockeys can do what he can do when he's on song, like that ride there. That's a great example of how good he can be. He's had like 4 or 5 inquiries in the last few weeks into rides where he's done strange things that haven't advantaged horses. But then we've seen him do things like, think it over, and this ride. So, you know, he's an incredible, naturally gifted rider when he wants to be. It's just the ones in between that have you scratching your head at times. And who knows? He could have anything going on at home or whatever that we just don't know about. Riding light. They took him off Tudor, and now he's come off Sardozi. To ride the Derby. Yeah, I don't know. I see. Well, I heard that Hippo's riding Tom Kitten this week, which is a little bit interesting. I'm assuming James goes on to Riff Rocket, so that would be Nash off Riff Rocket after winning the lead up on it. Not super surprising. Again, could be a reason for a bit of tension between the two. Yeah, I agree with that too, Callum. Not the easiest thing in the world. All right, Carla Poor, the death of my quaddies. It was a race. It was like, from a personal perspective, I think I put 6 or 7 in the quaddie, and it was about the only one I didn't put in. So rocket scientist for doing that. Slowly run race where they come home only slightly above average. Poor race overall. Favourite fails. Warning signs all over this race from a going forward perspective. Group 1 weight for age. It was an embarrassment of a race, really. Looked it on paper. Obviously, Post Impressionist was never going to this race and just sort of lined up because why not? 870,000 in a Group 1 that looked basically handed to it if it repeated its performance of the week before, which post-race looks the case. It just didn't do it. Pretty much every horse was pretty plain to my eye. Ashram pulls up with an issue, which further takes Merit out of the race. What else? I think there was a little bit of a interference with the other Waller horse late. Yeah, overall, pretty poxy looking race with Buckaroo. Military Mission was plain for mine. Probably went a little bit too slow, but still was plain. Let's have a look at this glorious race. Yeah, we'll watch it quickly, I agree. Great run expected. Well, it wasn't a great run, but it was a great run for it. It was a great run for it. So Dylan was quite positive on it. Ends up getting the nice run. Lucky to sort of get that trail and not end up outside the leader for too long. Gets flushed out early. So these are things that add merit to Carla Paul's run if he sort of had the complete toe up and suck. Sort of drops in behind here and then is able to get around their heels and win. But nothing's really doing anything. There has to be a winner. More Felons is there to win. Bayard Argent's there to win. Military Mission's there to win. Buckaroo, you know, a little excuse. Athabascan pretty one-paced, okay. Ashrun. Ashrun's probably the only horse I want to feed going out of the race, potentially, because it pulled up with an issue as well, sort of 2 out of 5 lame. So if it's had an issue that's affected its performance there, it was probably the one horse that maybe looks interesting. I don't know what you do with post-impressionlist. Yeah, I think Willie will be kicking himself that he's fallen into the trap of backing his horse up for prize money in a Group 1. Can it come back off that? Maybe. He's pretty kind to it late. I don't know. Yeah, I got no doubt these horses will line up in a Metrop or something and run well, but poxy race. I'm sure there's no questions, is there? The Tancred. Okay, so sorry, that was the Tancred. This is the Doncaster Prelude. I thought they'd go quicker than they did here. On fair times, I think I'll be surprised if they weren't adjusted a little bit and they went a little bit quicker than what they suggest here. But really dominant ride from Jamie Carr. Really wanted to keep track of a more victorious, not let it out of his sight. I know it only had 53 kilos, but we sort of said it's gone up 20 ratings points. So a huge class jump and able to, you know, adapt to it, and a pretty effortless win in the end. What is the form? That's probably the key to looking at its chances sort of backing up into a Doncaster. Yeah, we'll have a talk about that when we get to the Doncaster as well. But Bandersnatch sort of sits wide, keeps coming well wall off a bit of an average performance, more victorious off a bit of a gut buster last start. Von Hawk was very soft in betting. Rustic Steel, the jockey, said he was very lethargic during the race. Really bunched margins, sort of 3.6 back to 6 lengths is first to what 12th is 4th to 12th or something like that. So bit of a warning sign there. Offset a touch by a slowish tempo. There is some decent merit in the time and the overall sections late. So he's done a pretty good job, all things considered, another Will. It's just, and it's not a gut buster heading into a Doncaster, even though it's sort of been ridden really close to what I thought was going to be a faster speed. So because that didn't eventuate, probably is not a bad lead up to bounce off into a Doncaster. The horse definitely looks freakish. There's nothing, there's no oil painting, that's for sure. Doesn't parade well. So another Will here, more victorious bounces in front. I didn't know whether coin toss had sort of pressed for the front or not. It doesn't. That probably took a bit of speed out of the race. Bandersnatch is right behind it. Gets on its hammer. Now, you called it on the inside there. Looking for other interesting horses. Well Wall's back here. Von Hawk's an interesting horse, but I don't think it'll make a Doncaster off the back of this. I don't think its ratings high enough. Yeah, I was surprised that Jamie sort of gave the horse a kick in the ribs to really want to hold that spot outside lead, even then where she could have sort of let Bandersnatch come around and take the front. She wasn't going to risk being pocketed. She rode the horse like it's the best horse in the race. You can see, like, looking at him, I love that he's nice and long in front, that sort of his neck section going forward. I love it when they got that length in front of them, but sort of really gangly and doesn't look like he's grown into his body yet. So I think he's going to be an even better horse next time in. New Endeavour wasn't a bad run here, sort of 3 wide with cover. Thought it went well considering it was first up. When you're talking Doncasters, I do think that it's the only horse that can measure up. I think it's only got 50 or 50 and a half in the Doncaster. Again, sort of quickens really well, makes the others look a little bit flat-footed, and gets to his top pretty quick, and he's able to sustain that. So, you know, he's got all the attributes of a really talented horse. Von Hawk's pretty good down the outside. Well Wall's okay. Bandersnatch's really battled on well after sitting wide. As I said, this big bunch here is a bit of an issue when you're talking about like a really high-class race. You want those margins to be opening right up. But it's not easy to do that from an outside leader position in a slow-run race. So what price? We'll talk about it more when we get to the Doncaster, looking at the prices in the Doncaster. But I am a little bit concerned that this horse is doing it all a bit quick. So what is it now? 1, 2, 3. That was 4th. It's only going to be 5th up. It's had 8 starts, has it? Hard to ask anything more from a horse than what it's done this preparation. It's improved every run. It's done it off fast tempos. It's done off slow tempos. It's done off even tempos. Doesn't look like the mile's going to stop it under any circumstances. Wet track may be the problem, but it is a 5-length winner at Moe in a maiden off a at least very slow track run. So looks like it ticks most boxes weight-wise. You know, it's hard to knock the horse, isn't it? It's 28 days between runs there. The only thing we haven't seen with this horse, 28 days between runs, 23 days between runs, 172-day break, 24 days, 21 days, 28 days. Now we're going to see it on the 7-day backup. So that's the only little query, as well as, you know, physical maturity and that sort of thing for this horse going into a Doncaster. But, you know, physically it looks pretty good. Yeah, hard to get your head around that. Yeah, coin toss. I think coin toss found conditions to suit last start and the right race. And track was perfect on pace, whatever, and it just sort of, because it landed there, now maybe they're trying to ride it that way. Wide barrier looking for a spot. What was that in regards to, mate? I don't know what. I'd rather him coming into this off a 7-day backup than a month off. But as I sort of talked about, Mars horses are so hard to line up for me. But 14, 16, 16, 15 with a trial, it's going to be fit enough, even if it's wet. I'm not against another Will. I'm not against another Will. I don't think it'll be going back no matter what. I'd rather see it ridden 3 or 4 lengths off a speed in a Doncaster if that's possible. Yeah, they haven't been taxing, but they've been good, you know, like they've been fast runs and whatever. They're not, you know, they don't look taxing because he does it so effortlessly. Does that make them taxing, or does it mean? Yeah, well, that's probably my question. But the wet track's the bigger question for the Japanese horse. And I haven't looked at and we'll get through these couple more races and then get into the Doncaster. I thought this was a good performance from Gringotts in the last. They do run along fastest tempo of the day. Clearly the fastest tempo of the day. Time overall is pretty good, but I thought this was a very good win from a, you know, genuinely promising, you know, a horse that's got upside. I don't know whether he's worked it out or not. Yeah, I thought it was a good win just because it sort of settled midfield, and that's him out here, Gringotts. He never really stops working, doesn't find, you know, like a sweet spot in the race, and he's really dominant. Willowdale was the horse we talked about, Provincial Championships horse. Sorry, no, it's not, is it? Or is it? No, it can't be because it's trained at Warwick Farm. Ran against Territory Express that day, didn't it? What is it? Oh, it must be a Midway horse. Sorry, it's a Midway horse because Mark Connors is eligible for Midways. Brain surgeon me. So, yeah, just really overdoes things in front. Rachel on I Know a Star. Don't know why she went so hard on it, but basically took it out of play. Gringotts is in this spot here, so 3 wide, 4 wide, working the whole way, which is not easy to do first up. Be a little bit worried about it backing this up too quickly. You know, it does look to get a little bit of cover here, but I think it's pretty false. Never really gets cover. So I'd rather the old Ma, 28 days, 30 days between runs for Gringotts into its next run. No real excuses for those horses around it. Thought Razors had its chance. All the other runners around it basically had their chance, and they're somewhat flattered. I was keen on Sweet Mercy. One of the good fellas in our Discord mentioned it didn't look like it paraded well, and I think she was well below her best. Couldn't keep up early. They were going fast, but didn't finish off as strong as I thought it should, and it was a bit disappointing. Rosetta gets home down the outside, pace assisted for mine. Pretty hard horse to catch. Hollywood Hero was good, but it was first up and pace assisted. I know a star sticks on quite well, but as we sort of said, being up on speed was, no disadvantage, that's for sure on the day. I didn't think there were too many excuses for any of the beaten runners. So a bit of a nothing race. But Gringotts certainly a horse that can go up in grade from here and be competitive. Just a really dominant win, actually. Had trialled well, but went a lot better than I thought it would. Hollywood Hero, a little bit held up, strong through the line, through the middle there late. He's a horse that can run well with the right setup. Had trialled really well leading into, I think he trialled against another Will. If he drew a gate, he probably would have given the winner a fright. I don't think he was like running 5th or 6th in the Golden Rose, wasn't he? I don't think he was too far back. Yeah, I agree with you with Hollywood Hero. I don't know what that horse is, whether he's a leader or what, but that was probably his best run. Agree with Rob's comment there. He definitely had the hardest run in the race from that draw and never stopped working. It was a really good win. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there too, Callum, about vision and taxing runs, and that's what I'm trying to say, is that the horse makes it look effortless, but he's still doing things that aren't effortless for most horses. So how do you line it up? And I tend to agree with you that a horse that's out of its comfort zone the whole way, even if it's off slow tempos, is working hard the whole way, whereas one that looks comfortable, travels well, and looks to be doing things effortlessly, I think most of the time they aren't expending too much energy. A horse like Pride of Jenny may be a good example of that. Quick look at that race, and then we'll move on to the races from this week. So, again, I don't get the sections here, but they've run another ridiculously fast time. 16 lengths above is the overall time off their time, and that's without any sectional breakdowns whatsoever. Probably could have been proactive and got those, but yeah, fast times on the day look like they were, but she still sets up these crazy tempos and manages to keep running off the back of them. She's unlike anything I've seen too many times in racing, that's for sure. Pride of Jenny. I don't know, yeah, they say like he uses her up well. Far out, I would have loved to see them hold it together a little bit more here, just let her slide, a little bit later. They definitely rode Mr. Brightside too close. I don't know why they did that, but I'm not knocking Craig Williams for that. I think the camp would have been adamant that he rode it that way, and I think they erred. I think he should have definitely sat sort of where a tissue is at worst. And we can see that, the Cascadian coming through from last. Great ride. Comes around him. I don't think it wins. Rides for a little bit of luck. Gets it. Super strong late. 9-year-old gelding. And another example that, times don't mean a heck of a lot, because all the merit in the times really with the winner. Oh, sorry, the leader. Super honest as always. The Tissue and Mr. Brightside. Legato the same. Vow and Declare. Just a super horse. 2,000 to 2,400. Somehow won a Melbourne Cup. He's been a bit of a marvel, a bit of a born again horse in the last season or two. So bit of a nothing race for mine. Best ride won the race. Flattered by the tempo somewhat. Leader's done all the work. Every other horse around him's kind of had their chance, and the one that had the softest ride with the best run in the race and has won the race. But the second horse was the best run again. But the way she races, she's going to be that a lot of the time, right? Yeah, Cascadian definitely is a horse that doesn't like to overdo things, but he's just had an incredible career. He talked about him in a sort of stream on Saturday. He He ran in like 3 or 4 Cantalas. He ran Newcastle Newmarkets. He's running Doncaster. He's won a Doncaster. He's running a lot of crazy races. 9-year-old that seems to be continuing to do his thing. Yeah, I only hope she gets there. It'd be a pretty boring race without it, right? All right, let's look at these. Let's look at these races from Saturday, for Saturday. There's a million of them. So Doncaster starting up. Hang on, that's the other thing we'll look at. What's this? YR.no, is it? YR, my favourite website. We definitely don't need it to be in Norwegian. Randwick Racecourse. So 14 mils tomorrow, potentially. 21 mils Thursday, 39 mils and 11 mils. So you've got to say that it's going to be wet, right? As optimistic as anyone can be in this world, you'd have to say there's a big chance. Yeah, I agree with Daniel there. I'm surprised they're pushing on with Mr. B. I thought they'd give him a good break now and let him get ready for the spring. I'm a little bit the same. I was surprised to see they're pushing on. Yeah, ice bath in a Donny. So, yeah, okay, we're looking for wet trackers, surely. Like, it's just got to be a 90% chance that we're looking for wet trackers. Market-wise, where did they go? How did I lose that? I shut it. No, I didn't. It's here. You imbecile. All right, so another wheel, $3.50. I'm not going to knock that. Celestial Legend trial really well. Not going to knock it. Wet track, fine for it, I think. Really well set up. The Obama Samurai is the one that probably is horrifically hurt by wet tracks from what you hear. And if anything, he's muscled up and looks a lot stronger and bigger than last time we saw him, which is probably a negative again on top of the ground, like on the wet ground. So, you know, and then what do you do with Militarize, who obviously loves the wet? I don't think he's going good enough to beat another Will and Celestial Legend personally. I just think it really does look a 2-horse race. It's a shame because such a quality field, those top 6 or 7 runners, if they're not on wet ground. And then the horse that I think can sort of poke along here is Detonator Jack. I think it was I think it's got superior wet track form. I loved its first up run, ridden too close in that Democracy Manifest race, and it definitely does handle heavy tracks. A winner over 1,800, well, up to 1,800 metres as well, is it? It's one over 2,100. So to me, that's a good thing also. It's probably the horse that I think could run a cheeky race at odds. It just looks like it's definitely been set for this race, one out. Trialled really well leading into that Rosehill race and showed sort of at the end of its last prep that it was in somewhere near career best form, if not career best form, returned in that form. So if it elevates off that a little bit, I think it can get very close to a horse like Another Will. Another Will was a 5-length winner in a maiden off a fast tempo at Moe. The only time it's been a winner there, and like the track doesn't look heavy to me here. And even like he doesn't look the same horse here. He's very green and whatever. Smashes them, which you'd expect. First start in the race was on a heavy track. He ran second off a slow tempo where they ripped home. I don't think this means anything really. You know, he's just given away too big a start here and nearly run a, probably should have won that race. So he gets through the ground by Street Boss. I'm not a big breeding wet track person, but I think he'll have no issue with it. Really hard fit, well set up, lightweight, all the things you want to see from a horse racing on a wet track, really. Hard fit, low weights, and in good form. I think it'll run well. Celestial Legend, I think it was very smart for Les to give the horse a little barrier trial after the Randwick Guineas. He looked incredible there. He's only ever seen a wet track once, and that was the first time we ever saw him. He got beat by Kandinsky, which went around today. He should have won there. He ran quite well, winning the Rosehill Guineas what was that race? The Rosehill Guineas on the soft 6.5 with 2. I think we're going to see a lot wetter track come Saturday potentially. But he looks the sort of type that's going to get through the ground. Yeah, this is what you want to see in a mid prep trial. These 1200 metre trials are absolute garbage. But you can see he's just cuddled up, giving me a look around, and he sort of gives him a couple of little revs here to when he spots a gap. And
next up was Caesar's Palace. Golden Passport puts the head in.
And that's all you want to see. It's a little bit like that trial of Lady of Camelot leading into the Golden Slipper. You just want to see the horses alive and fresh and doing things really comfortably and easily, and this horse is. Yeah, another Will Faultless. I don't know what to do with Southport Tycoon, whether that forms at this level or not. Obviously, V8 has franked that form. It's had a trial since, so it hasn't seen a wet track either. I don't know what to do with it. It's seen a 5 and raced well. Typical Mar horse. I haven't watched its trial too closely. It sits in behind here. Yeah, no pressure on it. It's trialled well as well. No real knock on it. Ran the mile right out last start. V8's come out and shown that form's pretty good. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's a bit of a shame that this horse may be marred by a wet track. I'd be very surprised if Lindemann is dangerous here. Just don't think it will be. Think about it. I think it's hurt by a wet track. So I think a testing mile's not going to be up its alley. Kovalik is interesting. I don't think it's seen a wet track. So it's a run okay on a 7. It's 1 on a 7. So it's actually probably advantage because I think it's a 2,000 metre horse. So the wetter it is, probably the better chance that a horse like Kovalik has got. Like seriously wet, heavy track may help it. I still think this is the value horse, Detonator Jack, 25 to 1. So yeah, from a personal perspective, I think the top two are very obvious, but the ones to beat if the rain comes, I don't think Militarize is going that well, or he's that great a horse, but the wet track helps him. And I think Detonator Jack can run a race at Hobbs. Yeah, I don't mind that though. Yeah, I don't think Samana's got the class. Very tough horse. Joe Pride, I just think they maybe have erred a little bit. If you have a minute to chat about advice of punters trying to make away with current market industry problems, talk to what Googs said you mentioned on stream. Yeah, I'll put that down here. My brain's not in its best shape right now, but I'll try. Lady Laguna, I'm not sure she'll run. I don't think she did a good job behind V8 the other day. Surely is testing miles, not Lady Laguna's thing, but she's airborne, super fit. Yeah, surely she can't win a Doncaster. Surely she can't. Surely she can't. Did I just shut that? I think I did. What a moron. All right, we're opening it back up. Yeah, so that's the Doncaster for mine. Detonator Jack, probably the value away from the obvious. But we probably have to wait and see what these conditions do. My brain is literally foggy. Derby-wise, what does a wet track do to this race? Very difficult to work out. I do agree that CO Wolf, Cap Ferrar, more CO Wolf is looking like a value sort of option. Gambari's a bit of a nightmare, just keeps sort of poking along in there. I definitely would have preferred to see Tom Kitten running the Tancred. I think they missed the boat there. Will a wet track help Zardozi? Potentially the backup. Maybe Riff Rocket. $3 is very short for Riff Rocket. I sort of had egg on my face last night opposing it, and I'm just not sure how strong any of that form was, but I can't really get excited by $3 about it. It's not a race that I've got a huge opinion on at this stage, to be honest, and I'm not really sure what horse a heavy track will benefit in comparison one to the other. So it's obviously won the Vic Derby, but never seen a wet track in its life. First start in a race, it saw a 5 at Geelong, and hasn't seen one on any sort of distance. So what do you do with this horse? Again, see, like a sit sprint is where it's done all its best work. It's won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 races. The only time it's ever seen a tempo above average was its first up run this time in over 1400 at Flemington, where it beat King Colorado, Verdad, and those horses beat and sort of out-sprinted them late. Every other win's been off an even to slow tempo. And then to go onto a slogging derby, I don't know. I don't know what it'll do to this horse. Saturdays, he's only ever seen a wet track once, and that was for second start in a race at Hawkesbury where it won well. It was supposedly a 6 at Rosehill 2 starts ago when it was dominant there, so she looks adept in a wet track. She doesn't look like she's going to be under any pressure on a wet track. CL Wolf, again, hasn't seen a wet track really. First up, which is probably its worst run ever, was on a softish track. I know, so this was its bad run. It was much better this time. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Could my little Camel Cambare keep kicking on a wet track? Yeah, so it's weird, isn't it? None of these horses have seen wet tracks, and none of them look like superior stayers. So I think it'll be interesting. Apulia. So what's it done? Is it only third up? Is it Apulia or Apula? How do you spell it? Did I shut this again? No. Apulia. Oh my God. It's third up into a derby. I got it in my head that all of this form was crap. So it's second up here, second widest runner. Drops off quite quick. Comes again late, very one-paced. Yeah, I'm not going to dismiss it. Horrible prep. Horrible prep. Third up into a derby for mine, but $26, definitely not going to knock that. Looks like a horse that'll just keep whacking for sure, which is probably what you want. And I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree that Gambare looks not half a donkey, he's a bit aggressive, but I don't disagree that Gambare looks a little bit limited, but it could be a bit like Major Beal, right? It's very similar to Major Beal in every way, shape, and form. So, yeah, I think $26 Gambare and Apulia are not bad options. Noisy Boy was okay the other day. Yeah. Back me in, Johnny. Apulia is Benny Smith's, isn't it? Apulia is definitely not Ben Smith's. It is the Hayes Camp's horse. No, it's all good, Jay. I'll get back to it. I just I'm a bit cast mentally. TJ Smith again. A race. What do you do with this race when you're trying to line things up? You've got I Wish I Win first up, who I think looked almost unbeatable if the track was, in the fairish range. And then I watched its jump out. It was okay. What do you do with it on a heavy track first up? It's obviously won this race first up on a heavy track. Or not, sorry, it won this race on a heavy track last year, but third up, not first up. Its wet track form's very good. But we're talking taking on Imperatriz, who has mile form and is hard fit on a track that may be very demanding fitness-wise. She's won by, a 1,200-metre race, tear up by 6 lengths on a heavy track previously, beaten when sitting outside the leader in a fast run 1,400. So she's adept on wet ground, and, she's fourth up, only had a 98-day break since the spring, and even though she doesn't maybe look super dominant this time in, she's still holding her ratings pretty well, not reaching the height she was this time last time in. She doesn't look to be going as well, but maybe they've been aiming her for this and she peaks here. Not really sure. Back the horse, then track, then jockey, then gate. I don't agree with that. Jockey, the horse has got to be set up for the track and the race and the distance and all that. It's trying to find the marriage of what do you want to find today? What horse do I need to find to win? And then finding the horse that best suits that. But preparation is a huge part of it. You can't just produce out of thin air, I don't believe. Sunshine in Paris. If it was dryish ground, I thought was probably the danger to I Wish I Win. I thought her first up effort was really good. Obviously, probably should have won there, and scope to run 1,400, no problem. What does she do on a wet track? Got absolutely no clue, never seen one. I think she'll get through it. I think she's still very dangerous. I don't think it's in her best interest, a heavy track though. Private Eye doesn't look to be going as well as he can. Espiona's a bit of a nightmare this way. I agree she's not as good as she is the other way. Don't know what you do with Osmosis. Again, it's not a race that looks too exciting, really, does it? Like Imperatriz, as we sort of said, not at her best, but that may still be good enough given the setup here. I Wish I Win didn't jump out like a horse you wanted to have your life on and then throw in the heavy track potentially. It becomes a bit of a wash this race for mine, which is a shame. Might even look into sort of horses like Magic Time and things like that if it does become bottomless as other options. Size is another race. Like I'm going into this race looking to get Storm Boy beaten. He's a big, heavy boy, and I wouldn't imagine that a heavy track's going to suit him. I'd say that a more compact, skippy sort of horse like Lady of Camelot's going to be suited. I'd say Manal is going to be suited. I cannot believe they're pushing on with Coleman. I just, I can't believe how well he ran in the slipper considering his physical appearance. He looked like an Ethiopian runner, and it surprises me that they're going to push on with him. Certainly looking for horses like a hard fitter node on the backup. Pross can improve. But I'll definitely be trying to probably beat Storm Boy here, I would say, if this rain arrives. And I think that the two fillies are the clear starting point in Lady of Camelot. Manal, Traffic Warden, not sure. Coleman, I'll be definitely betting around, I'd say. And then, you want to get value about your Proston and nodes that are, hard fit Gay Waterhouse types that'll probably be up on speed. Half Cabin Eats Mud. Yeah, it's one on a heavy at Caulfield. It's one on a heavy at Randwick. So yeah, it's got wet track form. It's got wet 1,200 metre form. It's got wet 1,400 metre form. So profiles well, offer complete forgive. Does need to elevate to a career best, but you'll probably get a price. So I'm not going to knock off Cabin. Sorry, I missed that. Country Championships. I don't think heavy track helps Bandy's Boy at all. What horse it suits, I'm not entirely sure. But if the rain arrives, I'll probably be looking for something to beat Bandy's Boy, just because I think a testing 1,400 is going to hurt his chances. Maybe a horse like Rustly Crown, if it gets out in front and it could keep running. Yeah, it's an interesting race, but wait and see with the weather. Chairman's handicap. I've been waiting for this horse, Circle of Fire, but I don't really care. PJ Bell. Holy shit, there's my horse. Learning to Fly. Commemorative, look like it's back on track. Skybird. I don't know. These are sort of races where you're happy to find you're happy to wait and see what the final fields do, I think. Carbon Club. Jeez, that's a bad race. That's an interesting horse. Port Lockroy and the Carbine Club's a very interesting horse. Hasn't seen a wet track. I loved its jump out. Like they did had a gallop with I think it had a gallop with Learning to Fly. I think it's a very good horse, Port Lockroy. And I think a mile on a wet track, from what I've seen of it, will suit it. So it's a very interesting horse, Port Lockroy, in this race. I think this horse, Bullet's High, will just about win the Queensland Derby. I'm assuming that's where Port Lockroy's heading as well, but I think it's further along in its prep than Bullet's High is. Very dangerous horse, Port Lockroy is, so's Mikhail. Commemorative is a monster, big, heavy thing. Magic Time won on a track. What did it make of Azula today? I don't like when Gay's horses miss the start and don't show natural speed. Usually a sign they're not going well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Azula's on the back nine. Yeah, I agree with you, Contendies. Good combo. Caulfield and Randwick on wet tracks. Awesome. I prefer Randwick on a wet track to Caulfield. I struggle with Caulfield. It's just a weird joint that I struggle with. Yeah, it's a very interesting horse, Port Lockroy, but I still think you'll get that price. Just mark it down. I'd nearly wait for sort of final fields with it. Adrian Knox, Autumn Angel, Basilina, Hariri. Nothing stands out there as huge value. Let's see, Melbourne, isn't it? That's the race after. Yeah, I think Detonator Jack is a huge each way price in the Doncaster. It stands out for me. Derby-wise, nothing really stands out. I agree that Apulia looks a sort of one batting staying type and Gambari are, but I don't think they're huge overs or anything. I think you'll get that price regardless. But it's also a race where I'd rather play small in this price bracket than be entertaining any of the top 3 or 4 in the market. I do think sort of 10 to 1 above, sort of CO Wolf, Cap Farrar, not as much. And then down to these guys, if it's a heavy track, look more of a play. TJ, I'm happy to wait and see what happens there with draws and everything, even if it's going to make a big difference to the race. Big field, small field, barrier draws. TJ Smith, I'm happy to wait for. Size, I'm kind of happy to wait for this one too. But I'm keen to, if the rain comes, to play the fillies here. And then the rest, country championships. Again, I can't wait to revisit this race because this horse will be a dominant favourite no matter what. I want to have a good look at this race because I think Bandy's Boy could definitely be vulnerable at the end of a testing 1400. I'll save that question for later, mate, about someone starting out in the game and the way the market is, just because I'm pretty cooked. Warwick Farm, and it's a bit of a hybrid. It seems like today's a good example. You didn't want to be too far back, but you wanted to be getting off in the straight. It's a very temperamental track where you've got to be careful where the pattern's quite dominant and it gets like laney, so you kind of got to find the right spot all the time. It's not easy to bet. It's very hard to bet there early. It's sort of a creature of its own being, Warwick Farm. jockeys are very important. Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare of a track. But I'll probably cover it in more detail later. I'll write these things down because I always want points like this to sort of expand on. I'm obviously can talk a lot about it, a lot of crap. Yeah, it looks limited tempo in the country champs. That's why I'm interested in a horse like Singleton's horse. What was it called? Rustley Crown. I don't know if it's got wet track form or not, but I think it's a very underrated horse. Oh, wet track doesn't look absolutely ideal for it. But we'll have a look when the fields come out. All right, guys, that's it for me. I'm literally cactus, so I'm going to go and pass out. And thank you for coming along and helping. Questions, everything. It's great. All the interaction's great. Yeah, if you've ever got any questions or anything for things like these sort of meeting, please email them to me or message me on Twitter or somewhere just to give me a bit of a chance to prepare, because sort of those deeper questions, I like to at least have a few talking points. Any sort of races or whatever, bring them up, no problem. Easy to get into them, but it's just sort of the deeper questions are a little bit harder, and I can tackle them at other times as well. But yeah, appreciate it, enjoying it. Hope you guys are too. It's good fun for me, and it keeps me on my toes as well. But hopefully I get rid of this stupid virus, because it's keeping me on my toes more than I need to be. Cheers, guys. Have a great week. I'll talk to you later in the week. What are you prepared to lose today? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.